One thing that has kept the 2022 NASCAR season very interesting, at least for the fans, is the potential split happening in the sport. While this is not a very far-fetched scenario, as the teams and the France family seem to have a huge issue in terms of finding common ground, certain hopes have emerged that the sport will fix itself, with some very fresh energy being brought into the leadership segment. However, given that Tony Stewart has shown the world that a series inside a series is very much possible and manageable, the sport is about to face some serious turbulence ahead of the 2023 season. If you know about the current business model in NASCAR, then you'll know why the team's owners and drivers find it very hard to accept how their money is distributed. Around 65% of the money that the sport makes goes to the track itself. Team owners take around 25% of the money, and NASCAR itself takes the remainder of the 10%. Considering the fact that this is a multi-million-dollar business, one couldn't help but wonder, why on earth aren't the team's bosses satisfied with 25% of the total income? Well, this is where you'd think wrong, because teams have one of the most responsible and vital parts of bringing money to the sport: attracting sponsorships. This is where a team actually brings a lot to the table, and with every respective NASCAR team pouring in around 60 to 80% of its money from the sponsors themselves. And do not forget that all of this money goes to NASCAR, and the sport is supposed to make millions in revenue from attendance, TV rights, and other sources in order to return the money to the team's owners with a profit. Now, when you put things like this together, 25% seems like a small amount of money for team owners to get, especially after you consider the fact that they are going through hell and back to attract a vast amount of sponsorships to support their drivers. Sure, this is a sport that gives a lot back to its sponsors, but we've seen how interesting things can get when a driver doesn't get along with the team, as was the case with Kyle Busch in JGR, and the Candyman actually leaving the team due to the inability of JGR to continue the contract with M&M. Where does this money go anyway? For those of you who aren't familiar with how NASCAR is being managed, the first family that actually started the sport and is managing it through its successors is the France family. They are the ones that are responsible for every outcome of the sport, whether it's positive or negative. Bill France was the one who founded the sport all the way back in 1948, and now his successors are enjoying the luxury of receiving money from the team owners and organizing racing events. Sure, there are lots of responsibilities around this as well, and the new generation of Frances has shown that they are here to stay and not drive away team owners, but we'll get to that later in this video. NASCAR isn't a sport where every team owner goes out to get what he believes is his right, and they have a governing body called the Race Team Alliance. This is something very similar to the GPDA in Formula One, with the difference that here, the team owners are the ones that have meetings and require what they think should be required from the France family. Right now, the business model that has been set into place doesn't seem to be a good and profitable branch for the team owners. But why are they raising their voices after so many years? What is so different in the upcoming years that made the team owners think in another direction? The secret lies with Tony Stewart, who is also a co-owner of a NASCAR team, Stewart-Haas Racing. Apart from being a co-owner in one of the most famous racing sports in the USA, he is also hosting a separate racing series inside NASCAR called SRX, or Superstar Racing Experience. In 2022, Tony has shown that he has valid plans for this competition and does not plan to abandon it anytime soon. Quite the contrary, he thinks that the sky's the limit at this point of his career. SRX is branded as an American stock racing series, and apart from Tony Stewart, the founders of this separate competition are Ray Evernham, Sandy Montag, and George Pine. The championship itself is held with NASCAR equipment, more precisely with NASCAR cars. And if you're wondering how in the name of heck the SRX series exists parallel with NASCAR, we have a hint for you. It's the loophole that they were able to find in the legislation. Long story short, Tony Stewart was able to extrapolate the legislation on the table and convince NASCAR that he is able to run his own championship with non-NASCAR equipment, without the body actually interfering in any way. Plus, keep in mind that Stewart is the owner of SHR, a team that is also part of the RTA, the governing body of the sport made up of the team owners. So if a guy of Stewart's caliber starts worrying that NASCAR is going in the wrong direction, that definitely holds water in front of the potential investors. The first championship of SHR was held in 2021, and in 2022, there were 6 races hosted and network televised. But this is where Stewart's move has made everyone scratch their heads about whether it's worth continuing to invest in NASCAR. In 2023, the 6 races that are going to be held in this championship are going to be televised on ESPN, thanks to a huge TV rights deal that Stewart was able to lock in for his championship. Furthermore, the inaugural winner, Marco Andretti, is poised to make a return in 2023, which only adds to the popularity of the series and the possibility that NASCAR may not be that divinely protected after all. Now, the cards are in place when it comes to a potential split happening, but one needs to ask himself, is a split between NASCAR and the current team owners really the way to go? Remember, we've seen a split happen once before in the IndyCar 500, and eventually, it didn't end well for both sides. Although IndyCar 500 is currently owned by Roger Penske, a split occurred back in 1994, which resulted in the Indy Racing League being formed, with a split with CART being more than obvious in the previous years. A couple of years later, CART was the first side to be purchased from bankruptcy, with both sides having unified in one racing category, the IndyCar 500. Do you know who got the thicker end of this split? The team owners and the investors. Because the last thing that an investor wants to do is put his money in a competition that is in constant battle with the team owners in terms of revenue and dividing the cake. Therefore, while the split is a very realistic option with the current business model and the TV rights not poised to change from 2024 on, when a new contract needs to be signed by the team owners and the France family, both sides need to consider whether this is the path they want to go down. On the other hand, the RTA said that they make things public because all of their cries for change in the business model have fallen on deaf ears from NASCAR, and if it weren't for them, the sport wouldn't exist in the first place. The reply from NASCAR was simple. If you don't want to participate, there is an array of investors that would be more than happy to take your place as team owners, so move along. As we mentioned earlier in this video, there aren't a lot of good things happening when two of the most important sides in the sport are actually beefing, which is something that has been understood by the France family. This has been something that has been spoken about by Abraham Madkour, who is one of the most renowned journalists when it comes to NASCAR and all the drama surrounding the sport. When talking about the first race of the season, the Daytona 500, Madkour revealed that someone had asked him, "Why does NASCAR have more momentum these days?" And his response was plain and simple: it's the leadership. As of now, the sport is being led by Jim France, Lisa France Kennedy, and Ben Kennedy, and all three are bringing enormous values to where the sport is headed in the first place. The France family has put a lot of trust in the current president of the sport, Steve Phelps, and it seems like they are ready to finally have that sit-down with the RTA and agree on all terms, because at the end of the day, both sides want to get out happy and satisfied from these negotiations. What is the real threat, however, is the fact that neither side seems to have a soft spot that can be hit by the other, and they will stand firmly on their beliefs of what should be done after the 2024 season. With that in mind, a very interesting period lies ahead of us, and it seems like we're going to see quite some talks between the RTA and the France family. What do you think about a potential split? Do you think that this is the way to go for NASCAR? Let us know in the comments below. And make sure to click on the icon on your screen if you want to stay posted on all the latest NASCAR news.